How you growing? It's the last couple of weeks of winter, so let's see everything we've got growing in the garden. Over here in the part shade raised planters, we have lettuce still growing on. These ones back here got really badly affected by frost over the last couple of weeks, so I've had to completely trim them right back. They're starting to grow back pretty strong. I had to do the same with these two and they're growing through incredible. A kale plant over here is starting to come through. There was another one just here, but it looks like a little bug might have eaten it. Sad. Snow peas really starting to come through like crazy. I've had to put in a couple other parts of the trellis, which I still have to tie onto the main trellis. And over here to the main beds, I've got my garlic really starting to come in properly. I've started planting some of the companion flowers in here, some little alyssums starting to come through. Next row back, we have a row of bok choy. Seems to be getting eaten a fair bit by some sort of pest, but I'm pretty happy to let them have it because I think I'd rather them have the bok choy than a lot of the other stuff in the garden. Next up, we have the big brassica patch, which are really starting to come through properly now. I have the cabbages have just started to really bulk out. They're really starting to grow in on themselves, so starting to form the actual cabbage. These 4 and that smaller one over there are all cabbage, and the rest of the ones that you see are all broccoli. On a few of them, the broccoli, the florets are actually coming through. Next up, the back row is a whole bunch of misfits. I have a few silver beets all here. They were meant to be rainbow silver beet, but it looks like they've all come through white. Typical, it usually happens. Last year I grew rainbow carrots and they were nearly all white as well. I got very few orange and very few purple. And in amongst everywhere, because I've had so many spring onions volunteer pop up over where I grew spring onions last year, I've been interplanting them. This one over here is going great, and these on the whole are seeming pretty pest-free, so I'm hoping that that's part of it. It seems to be working pretty well. Continuing along, I kind of ignored it, but there are some volunteer carrots popping up there, which this is mostly where I'll be growing my tomatoes once they're in season. I don't know if I'll get to harvest those carrots, but if I do, that's pretty cool. This is also just kind of the misfits part of the garden, where this was just the only spare bed space that I had when I had a few seedlings and volunteers and stuff pop up, or some seedlings available for some tests that I did that never made it to the channel for various experiments and stuff. You can't really see, but I've got some baby spinach in the front, another cos lettuce. These are all different dwarfing peas. I believe these are 2 different species. They're both different types of broad bean dwarf beans, not dwarf peas. These are just snow peas. Again, these were left over from experiments. So yes, these were transplanted, which is great. I think of the 3 or 4 snow peas that we transplanted over here, only a couple of them made it, but they seem to be doing well, although they are behind. The snow peas that were over there popped up at the same time as over here, so clearly the transplanting has stunted the growth a little bit. I should still get some sort of harvest off them before the heat kills them though. Speaking of peas, I wanted a centerpiece to this area because I sort of left it in no man's land. It's not big enough to really have a table here, which was sort of the original plan, but it's too big to not do something with. So I've landed this half wine barrel, this big tall obelisk, which I've had for a while and had no idea what to do with it, and sort of put the two and two together. So these are mostly snow peas. There's also some dwarf peas and sugar snaps. There's also sweet peas in here, which the grand plan for this is to have this beautiful big tall centerpiece part of this part of the garden bed without really shade blocking the back row. This part of late winter and spring, hoping to get some harvest out of it, but then later on in the summer have it be a lot more of an ornamental piece with primarily things like the sweet peas. And also worth mentioning how pretty this rosemary plant has come up this year. It's flowered like crazy. My other one hasn't flowered. And in case you didn't know, the purple flowers that come off rosemary plants are edible, and I highly recommend trying one if you get the chance to, because it's a very gentle and aromatic, subtly aromatic version of rosemary, but it'll also have this burst of sweetness because of the nectar pocket in there. And I love edible flowers. It's awesome. Next up is the other main bed, which I only really planted to halfway through winter. So if you have found my channel much later than when this video has come out, If you start planting stuff in the middle of winter, this is about what it'll be looking like towards the end of winter, which should be a really encouraging thing to see, how close to harvest you can get things from starting quote unquote out of the growing season. So let's start in the back. I have a volunteer cabbage that popped up near the other cabbages that I pulled out of the bed that had only a few teeny tiny roots on it. There was not much of a root ball. I thought I'll whack it in the bed, water it in a bunch and see if I can get it to take to life. And it looked really dead for about a week and then started to just spring back to life. And now it's going pretty well and I'm really confident we'll get a harvest out of it. The next row back, we have some baby beetroots that are all growing in nicely. They look great. I love the way they look. And fun fact, in case you didn't know, beetroot and silver beet is the same plant. We have just selectively bred them to enhance different parts of the plant. First we had silver beet and ate it for its leaves. Then we eventually bred it to grow a nice bigger taproot, which is what the beetroot is. So if you can only grow one, but you like both, you can just grow beetroot and then still eat the leaves. Next up, I have 2 rows that I've planted out of those spring onions. These have come entirely volunteer. They will most likely be a cross-pollinated variety between a Lisbon and a continental. So I'm quite excited to see what properties they come out with, because a Lisbon has quite a big bulbous part at the bottom of the plant, but continental is just your typical spring onion or bunching onion that is just the straight onion, and they're looking good. Although one thing that I've found interesting with the onions is if you read the packaging, it wants a lot of space to itself, and I find it really fascinating that the couple that are just in parts of the bed that aren't near much other growth, like the ones in the middle of the silver beet, are a lot bigger than this row over here, which are planted a fair bit more tightly. And these are bigger again than all the ones that are really tight in the original bed. Next up, we have our rows of lettuces that are really growing in nicely. These were direct sown straight into the bed. They're looking great. It's probably only going to be another couple of weeks until we're going to be able to start harvesting them. Interplanted with a lot of the stuff over here are a bunch of chives. They have been battered and bruised pretty harshly by the cold, but looking at the weather forecast over the next couple of weeks, it's meant to be pretty warm. So I think they'll start to really go well, and they're in there for pest prevention, the same reason there's onions over there. This year has been some of the most pest-free growing that I've had in a fair while. The main thing that I'm dealing with is, you might notice my cat Tilly sleeping at the back of the bed, is if she sees just the bare parts of the bed, she will think that it's a litter box and dig in it. Once the plants come through, she doesn't do that, but I'm missing a chunk of the row of the radishes because she dug up them when they were only teeny tiny seedlings. Hello. Oh, did I wake you from your nap? Next up, seedling tray. These are still flower seedlings that have yet to go in the beds. They're all doing pretty well. What we have in here is alyssum, cornflower, snapdragons, and sweet peas. Next up, couple rows of radishes. One row is your typical nice bell-bottom round radish. The other row is the French radish, which is the long skinny one. Then at the front of the bed, because the soil sunk down so much, I can't really plant over winter in that front 20 centimeters or so of the bed. So I have left that bare, and then we've just got some companion flowers. Next, you might notice something a little bit different about the yard compared to the last time you would have seen it in any content. There is a big black area. Now, this in the last couple of days, I have completely scalped and mown down to dirt the grass that's here. I've chucked this tarp and then a little bit of weed mat over the top, and here's where 2 new garden beds are going to go, including one of them's going to be my bed for the internet's garden bed, and the other's just another bed because I might as well make good use of this space. Everything that around here are mostly plants that are ready to get planted in this upcoming spring. I've got a couple of grow bags full of herbs that are ready to go on my herb bed that I'm going to be making over there. Grapevines over there and over there that are going to be planted this upcoming spring. 3 different citrus trees that are all going along here once we remove these 2, more on that in a bit. Little olive tree over there. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, pomegranate over there. That one is probably also going to go in this row of the backyard orchard. There's a little spot over in the back corner that I think it will fit in. The Camilla sinensis, aka the tea plant, it's over here. It started to get some brown tips of leaves. I've got to work out what is causing that. I think my dog might have been weeing on it, if I'm being honest. Bloody Finn. Over here, carrot bucket. They have also been decimated by some pests. I don't know what, but I'll just, when one of these two new beds goes in, I think I'm gonna sow a pretty big patch of carrots and those will catch back up during the spring. That'll be fine. Another herb bed over here that has not been decimated, but certainly been taken to by some sort of pest. And I don't know what it is. I've also noticed in my little patch of strawberries that I won't get to today, that one day I came out and an entire strawberry plant had just disappeared completely. Thankfully, it started to pop up and leaves have started popping back up again. So I think once the weather warms up, they'll be fine. But certainly some pest issues that I have no idea what they are, like what the actual pest is, because I have yet to see an actual pest, just the leaves disappearing. And lemon tree is going incredible. I probably need to harvest all the lemons. They'll be getting to the stage where once they cut into them, they'll just be all husk, all skin. Next up, you may notice some trees have disappeared and or shrunk. They haven't shrunk. I have chopped down a couple of the ornamental trees and we've replaced these with some snow fruits. This is a dwarf peach tree and this is a cherry tree. These have only gone in the last couple days. These need to be planted and in ground still during the winter. And once that weather started to warm up, I had to drop everything, clear out I had to do a bit of manual de-stumping of the two trees that were here to get these into the ground as soon as possible. I still need to prune them back because when you are planting, especially cherry trees, you need to give them a good prune. You need to take off about half of the branches. And if you're still watching, thank you so much. These going in is part of my permaculture series, which part 2 hasn't come out yet, but this will be in part 2. So look out for the full details of the astoundingly tremendous difficult effort that it was to get the old trees out and these in. There was a lot more challenges that we ran into that I was not expecting to hit. Make sure to let YouTube know that you like Aussie gardening content. Hit like, consider leaving a comment. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, although I'm pretty sure the only people that would watch this would be my subscribers because this is nowhere near as engaging as my other content. I make a lot of actually cool educational content. If you've somehow landed here just for the update, hello, welcome. I appreciate you. And if you're here and new to gardening and you want to know how not to get ripped off when you're buying seedlings from nurseries, check out my last video where I covered exactly that. Thank you all, happy growing, and I'll see you next time.